The silence was the loudest thing Garrett Vance had ever heard. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It wasn't the hushed, reverent quiet of a church or the comfortable stillness of a sleeping house in the early hours of dawn. It was a heavy, suffocating weight that pressed against his eardrums and settled deep in the marrow of his bones, making them ache with a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. It was the silence of a life interrupted, of a home that had once been filled with laughter and paint fumes and bad country music, now reduced to echoing hallways and dust motes dancing in stale, unmoving air. Before we get started, please subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are viewing from and what time you are listening to this narration. The locations and times of day or night that these verified stories reach are of interest to us. It was Christmas Eve in Silver Pines, Montana, and for Garrett, it was just another Tuesday night spent trying to outrun a ghost he knew he could never escape. He sat behind the wheel of his black Ford F-150, the heater rattling a familiar, wheezing rhythm against the encroaching cold. The digital clock on the dashboard blinked 11:42 p.m. Outside, the world was vanishing. A white curtain of snow, aggressive and relentless, erased the landscape, turning the familiar winding curves of Route 9 into a treacherous, alien terrain. Most people were home right now. They were wrapping last-minute gifts, drinking eggnog spiked with bourbon, arguing with relatives about politics, or sleeping warm in their beds next to someone they loved. But Garrett couldn't go home. Not yet. The farmhouse at Highland Creek Ranch was too big, too empty, and too full of memories that had sharp edges. Every corner of that house held a shadow of Liam, his laugh in the kitchen, his boots by the door, his scent that still lingered in the closet despite 5 years of detergent and time. So, he drove. He told himself he was patrolling, a force of habit from his days as a sheriff's deputy, even though he was technically off duty and had been retired for 2 years. He told himself he was checking for stranded motorists or fallen trees. But the truth, a truth he only admitted to himself in the darkest hours of the night when the whiskey bottle was empty, was that he was afraid of the quiet. He was afraid of walking into that house and hearing nothing but his own heartbeat. He navigated a sharp bend, his tires crunching over black ice hidden beneath the fresh powder. The headlights cut 2 cones of yellow into the swirling white void. Then he saw it. It was just a shadow at first. A smudge of darkness against the pristine white of the snowbank on the passenger side. A deer, maybe? An elk brought down by the cold? Garrett slowed down, his instincts prickling. He squinted, leaning forward over the steering wheel, his eyes narrowing. The wipers slapped back and forth, clearing the glass for a split second before the snow obscured it again. The shadow moved. It wasn't an animal. It was too small, too curled in on itself. It was a person. Jesus, Garrett hissed, the word escaping him like a prayer. He slammed on the brakes. The truck fishtailed, the rear end sliding dangerously toward the ditch. Garrett corrected the skid with the practiced ease of a man who had driven these mountains his entire life, bringing the heavy vehicle to a shuddering, violent halt. He threw the gear into park and killed the engine, though he left the headlights on to slice through the dark. He grabbed his heavy-duty mag light from the passenger seat and shoved his door open. The wind hit him like a physical slap. It stole the breath from his lungs, stinging his eyes and instantly freezing the moisture in his nose. It was 20 degrees below zero with the wind chill. Nothing survived out here for long. Not tonight. Not in this. "Hey!" Garrett roared over the howling wind, tramping through the knee-deep snow. "Hey! Can you hear me?" The figure didn't respond. It was just a dark lump huddled against the mile marker sign, slowly being buried by the falling snow. It looked like a pile of discarded laundry. Garrett ran, his heavy boots sinking deep, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. As he got closer, the beam of his flashlight illuminated the details, and a sick feeling of horror coiled in his gut. It was a boy. No, a young man. But he looked so small curled up like that. He was wearing a denim jacket. Just denim. No down coat, no scarf, no hat. His hands were tucked into his armpits, and he was shaking so violently that his entire body seemed to be vibrating, blurring the edges of his silhouette. "Hey, look at me," Garrett demanded, dropping to his knees in the snow. The cold soaked through his jeans instantly, biting into his skin, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was fear. Fear that he was too late, that he was going to find a corpse on Christmas Eve. He reached out and touched the boy's shoulder. The denim was frozen stiff, hard as a board. The boy flinched, a weak, jerky movement, like a wounded animal expecting another blow. He lifted his head slowly, fighting the stiffness in his neck. Garrett's breath hitched in his throat. The flashlight beam illuminated a face that was devastatingly beautiful and terrifyingly close to death. The boy had huge, dark eyes that were glassy and unfocused. His skin was pale, translucent almost, except for his lips, which were a shocking, dangerous shade of blue. Snow had crusted on his long eyelashes, making him look like some tragic ice sculpture abandoned on the side of the road. "Dad?" the boy stammered. The word was barely a whisper, mangled by teeth that were chattering so hard it sounded painful, like bones rattling in a jar. "No, son, I'm not your dad," Garrett said, his voice rough with urgency. "My name is Garrett." He moved quickly. He unzipped his own heavy shearling coat, the one that had kept him warm through countless blizzards, and stripped it off. The biting cold instantly attacked his flannel shirt, sinking its claws into his skin, but he didn't care. He draped the heavy coat around the boy's shaking shoulders, tucking it tight around him to trap whatever body heat he had left. "We need to get you warm," Garrett said, rubbing the boy's arms vigorously through the coat. "Can you stand? Can you walk?" The boy stared at him, blinking slowly, as if processing the words took enormous effort. "He said to wait," the boy whispered. A single tear tracked through the frost on his cheek, freezing before it reached his chin. "He said someone would come." Garrett froze for a split second. The words hung in the frozen air, heavy and cruel. He said to wait. "Someone did," Garrett growled, a fierce, hot protectiveness flaring in his chest. It was an emotion he hadn't felt in years, sudden and overwhelming. "I came. I'm here." He stood up and reached for the boy's hands to pull him up, but the kid's legs gave out immediately. He was dead weight, his muscles locked up from the cold. Okay, I've got you," Garrett murmured. He bent down and scooped the boy up into his arms. He was light, alarmingly so. He felt fragile, like a bird with hollow bones. Garrett held him close to his chest, shielding him from the wind with his own body as he turned and trudged back toward the truck. The walk back felt miles long. The wind screamed in Garrett's ears, trying to push him back, trying to claim the prize it had found on the roadside. But Garrett just held on tighter, his jaw set in a grim line. "Not on my watch," he thought grimly. "Not tonight." He reached the truck and fumbled with the door handle, finally wrenching it open. He maneuvered the boy into the passenger seat, careful not to jostle him too much, then slammed the door shut against the storm. He ran around to the driver's side and jumped in, locking the world out. Inside the cab, the silence was different now. It wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the sound of the boy's ragged, shivering breathing. Garrett cranked the heater dial all the way to the red. He reached behind the seat and grabbed the emergency wool blanket he always kept there, a habit from Liam, who used to say Garrett was always prepared for the apocalypse, but never for a picnic. He leaned over the console and tucked the wool blanket around the boy, over the shearling coat, creating a cocoon. "Here," Garrett said, grabbing his silver thermos from the cup holder. He unscrewed the cap with one hand. "It's coffee. It's black, and it's probably bitter as hell by now, but it's hot." The boy tried to reach for it. His hands emerged from the coat, pale and trembling. They shook so violently he couldn't even grip the rim of the cup. He looked at his own hands with a sort of detached confusion, as if they belonged to someone else. "I've got it," Garrett said softly. He reached out and covered the boy's small, freezing hands with his large, warm ones. He steadied the cup and guided it to the boy's lips. The contact sent a jolt through Garrett, electric and startling. The boy's skin was like ice, but beneath it, Garrett could feel the faint, frantic pulse of life. It was a connection, sudden and profound, that made the hair on his arms stand up. The boy took a sip, then gasped as the warmth hit his stomach. He coughed slightly, his eyes watering. "Good," Garrett encouraged. "Take another. Small sips." After a few mouthfuls, some color began to return to the boy's cheeks. A faint flush that made him look less like a corpse and more like a person. He slumped back against the seat, exhausted, clutching the blanket tight under his chin. "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was clearer now, though still raspy. "Don't thank me yet," Garrett said, shifting the truck into gear. "We need to get you to a hospital. What's your name, kid?" "Noah," the boy said softly. "My name is Noah." "Okay, Noah. I'm going to take you into town. The clinic might be closed for the holiday, but Dr. Evans lives above it. I'll wake him up." "No!" The shout was sudden and terrified. Noah sat bolt upright, his eyes wide with panic. He grabbed Garrett's arm, his fingers digging into the flannel. "Please," Noah begged, his breath hitching. "No doctors, no police. Please. You can't." Garrett stopped, his foot hovering over the gas pedal. He looked at the terror in Noah's eyes. It wasn't the fear of a criminal. It was the fear of a victim who expects to be punished for bleeding. "Noah, you have hypothermia," Garrett said reasonably. "You need to be checked out." He said if I told anyone it would be worse," Noah stammered. "He said I was a sinner, that I brought this on myself." Garrett felt a muscle in his jaw jump. "Who said that?" Noah looked down at his lap, shame coloring his face. He picked at a loose thread on the wool blanket. "My father," Noah whispered. Garrett went very still. The storm outside seemed to fade away, replaced by the roaring of blood in his ears. "He found out," Noah continued, the words spilling out now like a dam breaking. "About me. About who I am. He found texts on my phone. From a guy I was seeing at college." Garrett gripped the steering wheel until his leather gloves groaned under the strain. He knew this story. God. He knew it. But hearing it spoken aloud, here in the dark, with the evidence of its cruelty sitting shivering beside him, made him want to put his fist through the dashboard. "He drove me out here this morning," Noah said, his voice trembling. "He stopped the car. He opened the door. He said no faggot was going to sleep under his roof on Jesus' birthday. He said I was an abomination." Noah paused, choking back a sob. "He threw my bag into the woods. He said if nature didn't take me, maybe I'd learn my lesson. He said nobody would want someone like me. That I was trash." Garrett closed his eyes for a brief second, trying to master the rage that flooded his veins. It was a white-hot, blinding fury. He wanted to find this man. He wanted to drive to wherever this father lived and show him exactly what kind of lesson nature taught. But he couldn't. Not right now. Because Noah was here, and Noah needed him. "He left you to die," Garrett said flatly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Noah nodded, tears finally spilling over. "He said to wait, that if God loved me, he'd send someone. But nobody came. I waited for hours. I thought maybe he was right." Garrett turned in his seat. He reached out, gentle but firm, and tilted Noah's chin up so their eyes met. "Listen to me," Garrett said, his voice dropping an octave, rough with emotion. "He was wrong. You hear me, Noah? He was dead wrong. You are not trash. You are not an abomination. And you sure as hell are not going to die tonight." Noah looked at him, searching his face for a lie, for the inevitable rejection, but he found none. Just the steady, burning resolve of a man who had decided, in that moment, that he would stand between this boy and the cruel world, even if it killed him. "The roads to town are blocked by drifts," Garrett lied smoothly. They weren't, not completely, but he wasn't going to take this terrified boy to a stranger right now. "I live a few miles back, Highland Creek Ranch. It's warm. I have food. You can rest there." Noah hesitated, fear warring with exhaustion. You'd let me stay?" "I'm insisting on it," Garrett said. He put the truck in gear and turned around on the narrow road. The drive back was silent, but it wasn't the heavy silence from before. It was a fragile, tentative quiet. When they pulled up to the ranch house, the headlights swept over the wide porch and the dark windows. To anyone else, it looked picturesque. A log cabin nestled in the snow, smoke curling from the chimney. To Garrett, it usually looked like a mausoleum, but tonight, with Noah sitting beside him, it just looked like shelter. Garrett helped Noah inside. As soon as the door closed behind them, the warmth of the wood stove wrapped around them like a blanket. The smell of pine and old wood welcomed them. "Sit," Garrett commanded gently, guiding Noah to the plush leather sofa in front of the fireplace. "Don't move." Garrett went into action mode. He stoked the fire until it roared. He turned on the lamps, pushing back the shadows that had claimed the corners of the room for years. "I need dry clothes," Garrett muttered to himself. He went upstairs to the master bedroom. He opened his dresser drawer and pulled out a soft gray hoodie, his favorite, and a pair of thick fleece sweatpants. He grabbed a pair of wool socks. He paused for a moment, looking at the empty side of the bed. For 5 years, he had slept on the left side, leaving the right side pristine, untouched. "Not tonight," he told. "The ghosts. Tonight is for the living." He went back downstairs. Noah was staring at the fire, shivering slightly, looking small and lost in the large room. "Here," Garrett said, handing him the clothes. "Go change in the bathroom. The hot water takes a minute, but it works." When Noah emerged 10 minutes later, Garrett's breath caught in his throat. The clothes swallowed him. The hoodie hung down to his thighs, the sleeves covering his hands completely so only his fingertips peeked out. The sweatpants were rolled up at the waist and ankles. He looked adorable. He looked soft. He looked safe. And Garrett felt a tug in his chest. A dangerous, terrifying tug. It was the feeling of a frozen heart cracking open, just a hairline fracture, but enough to let the light in. "Better?" Garrett asked, his voice gruff to hide the emotion. "Much," Noah whispered. He hugged himself, rubbing the soft fabric of the hoodie. "It smells good. Like pine and safety." Garrett turned away quickly, busying himself in the kitchen so Noah wouldn't see the flush on his neck. "I'm making grilled cheese and tomato soup. It's not a Christmas feast, but it's hot." "That sounds perfect," Noah said. They ate at the small kitchen table. Garrett watched Noah eat with a heartbreaking kind of hunger, not starving, but desperate for comfort. Noah blew on the soup, his dark lashes casting shadows on his pale cheeks. Under the table, their knees brushed. Noah flinched violently, jerking his leg back as if he'd been burned. He looked up, eyes wide with apology. "Sorry, I didn't... I'm sorry." Garrett stopped chewing. He set his sandwich down slowly. He hated Noah's father with a fresh wave of intensity. He hated the man who had taught this boy that touch was a precursor to pain, that proximity was a threat. "Noah," Garrett said softly, "you don't have to apologize for taking up space. You don't have to apologize for existing." Noah lowered his eyes. "I'm not used to this kindness. Not lately." "Well, get used to it," Garrett said firmly. You live here alone? Noah asked, looking around the kitchen. It was clean, but cluttered with the debris of a bachelor life. Mail on the counter, a single coffee mug by the sink. Yeah, Garrett said. For 5 years now. You never married? Garrett took a sip of his water. He looked at the empty chair across from him, the one Noah was sitting in now. I was, sort of, in every way that mattered. My partner, Liam. He passed away in an accident on the ranch. Noah stopped eating. He looked at Garrett with wide, surprised eyes. Partner? You mean... I mean I'm gay, Noah, Garrett said, holding his gaze steadily. Just like you. The effect of those words was instantaneous. The tension in Noah's shoulders dropped. The wariness in his eyes dissolved into relief. He slumped slightly in his chair, exhaling a breath he seemed to have been holding since he got in the truck. Oh, Noah whispered. A small, tentative smile touched his lips. So, I'm safe here. In every way. In every way, Garrett confirmed. I know what it's like, Noah. To be told you're wrong. To be looked at like you're broken, I know. Thank you, Noah said, his voice thick with emotion. For saving me. I didn't just save you, Garrett murmured, almost too quiet to hear. He looked at Noah, really looked at him, and felt that crack in his heart widen a little more. I think I needed saving too. Later that night, the exhaustion finally caught up with Noah. His eyelids were drooping, his movements slow and heavy. The warmth of the fire and the soup had sapped the last of his adrenaline. I have a guest room, Garrett said, standing up to clear the plates. But the heater vent in there is finicky. It gets cold. It was a lie. The heater worked fine. But the thought of putting Noah in that cold, impersonal room at the end of the hall felt wrong. It felt like abandonment. Noah hesitated at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at the dark hallway, then back at Garrett. The panic was back in his eyes, a flicker of the boy he had found in the snow. I don't want to be alone, Noah admitted, his voice small and ashamed. Every time I close my eyes, I see the snow. I see the headlights driving away. I feel the cold coming back. Garrett's heart clenched. He knew the rules. He knew he was older, a stranger, that he should maintain boundaries. But he looked at this boy who had been thrown away by the people who were supposed to love him, and the rules disintegrated. You don't have to be alone, Garrett said huskily. My room, it has a king bed, plenty of space. I'll stay on my side. You stay on yours. If that's okay? Noah nodded eagerly, relief flooding his face. Please. Yes. The master bedroom was large, dominated by a massive wooden bed frame Garrett had built himself years ago. He lent Noah a fresh pair of boxers and waited while he changed in the ensuite. When they climbed into bed, the room was dark, lit only by the moonlight reflecting off the snow outside. Garrett lay on the far left edge, stiff as a board, listening to the wind howling outside. He listened to Noah's breathing hitch and settle. Hours passed. Garrett drifted in and out of a light doze. Sometime in the dead of night, a sound woke him, a whimper. Garrett turned his head. Noah was thrashing in the sheets. He was crying in his sleep, small, distressed sounds that tore at Garrett's heart. No, Daddy, please, don't go. It's cold. The nightmare. Garrett didn't think. Instinct took over, the instinct to comfort, to protect. He rolled over and reached out. Noah, he whispered. Noah, wake up. Noah didn't wake. He gasped, his hands clawing at the air. Garrett pulled him close. He wrapped his arms around the shaking boy and pulled him against his chest. Shh, Garrett soothed, stroking Noah's hair. I've got you. You're not there. You're here. You're safe. Noah gasped in his sleep, his body tense. Then, realizing the warmth, realizing the safety, He collapsed. He curled into Garrett instinctively, burying his face in Garrett's chest, his hands grabbing Garrett's t-shirt in a death grip. He fit. That was the terrifying thought that flashed through Garrett's mind. Noah fit against him perfectly, like a missing puzzle piece. Safe, Noah mumbled, drifting back into a deeper, dreamless sleep. Garrett lay there in the dark, holding this stranger, this broken boy who had crashed into his life. He felt Noah's heart beating against his own. He smelled the faint scent of his own soap on Noah's skin. And for the first time in 5 years, the cold spot in the bed was gone. The loneliness that usually slept beside him had been banished. Garrett rested his chin on the top of Noah's head. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he prayed. He didn't pray for forgiveness. He prayed for the chance to keep this, to keep him. Christmas morning broke bright and painfully clear. The sun dazzled off the fresh snow, turning the world into a blinding sheet of diamonds. Garrett woke up first. He didn't move. He couldn't. Noah was draped over him like a heavy, warm blanket. Noah's head was resting on Garrett's shoulder, his breath puffing warm against Garrett's neck. One of Noah's legs was thrown over Garrett's waist, tangling their limbs together. It was intimate. It was domestic. It felt right. Garrett lay there for an hour, just watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight coming through the window. He traced the line of Noah's jaw with his eyes. He watched the flutter of Noah's eyelashes. He felt a possessiveness take root in his soul, deep and ancient. He's mine now, Garrett thought with startling clarity. Anyone who wants to hurt him has to go through me, his father, the world, anyone. When Noah finally stirred, stretching like a cat, he froze. He opened his eyes and found himself wrapped around Garrett. He scrambled back, his face turning a brilliant crimson. "Oh my God," Noah stammered, pulling the duvet up to his chin. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I must have moved in my sleep. I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize," Garrett said. His voice was rough with sleep, deep and rumbling. He reached out, catching Noah's wrist before he could retreat further. "Noah, stop." Noah went still, looking at Garrett's hand on his wrist, then up at Garrett's eyes. "I didn't mind," Garrett said softly. "I slept better last night than I have in years." The air between them crackled. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was something else, something heavier, something hotter. Noah bit his lip. He looked at Garrett with a vulnerability that made Garrett's chest ache. "Garrett?" Noah whispered. "Yeah? Why are you being so good to me? You don't even know me." Garrett sat up slowly. He brought his face close to Noah's, invading his space gently, giving him time to pull away. Noah didn't pull away. He leaned in. "Because you deserve it, Noah," Garrett said intensely. "Because you are worth saving." He brushed a stray lock of hair from Noah's forehead. "And because," Garrett admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I haven't wanted to be this close to anyone in a very long time. You woke me up, Noah. In the snow, you woke me up." Noah's breath hitched. He looked at Garrett's lips, then back at his eyes. "I'm glad," Noah whispered. "I'm glad you found me." "Me too," Garrett said. He didn't kiss him. Not yet. It was too soon, but the promise of it hung in the air between them, more potent than mistletoe. 1 year later. The ranch house at Highland Creek was unrecognizable. It wasn't the furniture. That was mostly the same. It was the life. Music was playing softly from the stereo, some indie folk band Noah liked. The smell of cinnamon, pine, and roasting turkey filled the air. There were paintings on the walls now, vibrant landscapes and sketches of horses, all signed Noah V. in the corner. Another Christmas Eve. Noah stood by the towering Christmas tree in the corner of the great room. He was hanging a delicate glass ornament, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. He looked healthier now. His cheeks were flushed with life, not cold. He had filled out, the hollow look of hunger and fear gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. Garrett stood in the doorway, watching him. He leaned against the frame, crossing his arms, just drinking in the sight. He remembered the boy shivering in the snow. He remembered the fear. And he looked at the man standing there now. Safe, loved, home. Garrett walked across the room silently. He came up behind Noah and wrapped his arms around his waist, pulling him back against his chest. Noah didn't flinch. He leaned back into the embrace instantly, humming with contentment. "Happy Christmas, sweetheart," Garrett murmured, burying his face in the crook of Noah's neck. He kissed the sensitive spot behind his ear, feeling Noah shiver. A good shiver. "Happy Christmas, Garrett," Noah replied, covering Garrett's hands with his own. "I got you something," Garrett said. "We did presents this morning," Noah laughed, turning in Garrett's arms to face him. "You gave me that easel, which I love, by the way." "This is different," Garrett said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Noah's eyes went wide. He stopped breathing. "Garrett, is that—" Garrett smiled, a slow, warm expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He opened the box. It wasn't a ring. Not yet. It was a key. A shiny brass key on a leather keychain branded with the ranch's logo. Noah stared at it, confused. I have a key. You gave me one months ago." "That was a guest key," Garrett said softly. This is the master key. To the house. To the gates. To the safe. To everything." He took Noah's hand and pressed the key into his palm, closing Noah's fingers over it. "I know you've been staying here," Garrett said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know we've been us for a while now. But I want it to be official. I want you to know that this isn't temporary. You aren't a guest, Noah. You never were." Garrett stepped closer, his gray eyes locking onto Noah's dark ones. "This is your home. As long as you want it. Forever, if you'll have me." Tears welled up in Noah's eyes, spilling over faster than he could wipe them away. "You saved my life that night," Noah whispered, his voice trembling. "I was dying out there. In every way a person can die." "No," Garrett said firmly. He reached up and cupped Noah's face with both huge, warm hands. He wiped the tears away with his thumbs. "You saved mine, Noah. I was dead in this house. I was freezing to death for 5 years, and I didn't even know it until you showed up and turned the lights back on." Noah let out a choked laugh that sounded like a sob. "I love you, Garrett." "I love you, Noah," Garrett replied. "More than I thought was possible for an old cowboy like me." Garrett leaned down. He brushed his lips against Noah's, softly at first. A question. Noah answered it instantly, rising on his tiptoes, deepening the kiss. It was a kiss that tasted of coffee and cinnamon, and forever. It was a kiss that banished the last of the ghosts from the corners of the room. Outside, the Montana snow fell gently, covering the world in a blanket of white silence. But inside, by the roaring fire, wrapped in each other's arms, there was no cold. There was no silence. There was only warmth, only love, only home.